Hello my beautiful co-creators, Lidu here. This is another of my soul sessions, and today I have Harold Becker. He's the founder of the Love Foundation. He's the one that started the Global Love Day that we celebrate each 1st of May around the world. He's done some amazing things and spread love all around the planet. He's someone I know for many years and highly respect, and today it is such an honor to be interviewing him. I really encourage you to listen to every single second of this interview that is so filled with love and inspiration. It will definitely turn your world around. Harold Becker, how are you?
Wonderful, wonderful to be here with you.
It is such a pleasure and an honor to have you as the person that have founded the Love Foundation. Not only that, but because of you, now we're celebrating every 1st of May, the Global Love Day.
Yes.
And I found that amazing. I met you some time ago already, many years ago. You started this 9 years ago. We met through the internet. We have many friends in common, and you're definitely one of the ambassador of love. And I would love to hear and that you share with us why you decided to go on such a quest and such a mission in life to inspire thousands and millions of people around the world to celebrate love.
Mostly I think because I'm crazy. No. I come from a banking background, a finance background. I have my master's in business, and I was doing the perfect career path. I was doing, the right suits, the right cars, and the right activities, and climbing the ladder. And I got to a point in my life where I realized that my inner awarenesses, shall we say, my inner happiness wasn't happy. The external things weren't giving me what I thought they would give me, and I just decided in 1990 to literally walk away from everything. I decided to just go and, for at least a short time period, pursue kind of a self-awareness, go into introspection, and lo and behold, here nearly 20 years later, it's amounted to several books, a nonprofit, a consulting company, but really a series of awarenesses where I started to really learn shall we say, the real universal laws of life, the things that were really making my life me, and the role that I could play in being more aware of what I was doing in creating my life, as opposed to reacting to all these external circumstances. And I think out of that pursuit is the one fundamental thing that kept showing up was this idea of love, in particular unconditional love, and I think that's where the platform kind of originated.
Yes, so how is your life now different than the fearful life you used to live in?
There's still always moments where, something from experiences might trick me or come to my awareness or somehow cause me to stumble for a brief moment. The difference is that within, perhaps a split second, I can catch it and turn it around and return to that balance, that inner balance, and that love state. Certainly that's many years of practice, many years of awareness, many years of study and experimenting and experiencing life. And yet, I would say that when I started this, it was, if I were lucky, maybe 1% where I was truly happy and 99% in fear, and we are pretty close to having that reversed. So I think it's a pretty remarkable life now. I look forward to living because I realize the part that I'm playing in creating my own life.
So tell me more about that. You wrote Unconditional Love, fantastic book on love. What is your daily life? How does it look like now? How stable is it? How magical is it?
Well, the first book actually came out was Internal Power, and that was in '93. That was a culmination of the key areas that I looked through in life in those first couple of years after I left the business world. And the first doorway is choice, and then the last doorway is unconditional love. And so again, my platform for me became, I could choose to love unconditionally. I could choose to actually accept myself unconditionally. And that was a formative beginning for me, because I realized that if I didn't accept myself, it was impossible to accept anything outside myself. So over the years, and in that book, and then over the years, I've developed and shared a very simple definition for unconditional love which is an unlimited way of being, which was the title of the second book, Unconditional Love and an Unlimited Way of Being. It's really approaching every moment of life, being fully present in the now, and simply realizing that in this now moment, there are infinite potentials. In this now moment, I can choose to create based on the perspectives I choose to have, not the perspectives perhaps that everybody else is having around me, or that maybe the suggestions that others would want to have me accept as theirs to become my own. So the books really mirror kind of the soul journey or the practical journey that I've gone through, and I chose to share all those insights that I experienced in the books.
So can love be only experienced in the present moment?
Being present is a realization I came to that after looking at life from a variety of angles, I realized a lot of my attention early on when I started to, become more aware of myself, is a lot of my thoughts and my feelings were based on past experiences, which was really my memory of things of the past. And they were, generally speaking, not necessarily the best memories. They were often the more difficult memories or the challenging memories or the ones where there was, perceived hurt or harm or failure or lack or something like that. Well, I started to equally realize that if I went out, if those were my conscious thoughts in the moment, or as I said early on, it was the unconscious thoughts of the moment, then my future was often then an expression of those same negative or limiting or lack-based thoughts and feelings. So my future, even though I would have, say, dreams of potentials, I really didn't believe in those dreams and potentials because I had so many of my present thoughts focused in the past. And what I realized in that understanding is that this was the only moment where I was fully here. My physical body, my emotional body, my mental body, and shall we say even the spiritual body all coexisted in this now moment. So it became very obvious to me that being present in the moment was the only place where I could make a conscious choice. A conscious choice to, say, let go of my attachment to the past, say, desire and bring forth and manifest a new future based on what I would really like to create. And that has been truly a guiding point for certainly the last nearly 20 years, is being present in the moment, because in the moment, that's also when I can not only choose to love myself unconditionally, I can also then turn around, share that love, and be that love.
And did you find that throughout the years of practicing conscious loving, did your love deepened? How's been your
Absolutely.
experience of love throughout those years?
Well, as what we share with the unconditional love, and what I've shared in the books and workshops and all the various ways that I've been presenting it now for quite some time, is that when we make unconditional love our focus in life, our mantra, our guiding principle, whatever format we like to call it, when we make unconditional love in the forefront of our choices, then every decision will be based with unconditional love, at least within the decision-making process. In other words, even when we may have a moment where, say, fear catches us a bit off guard, or we have a reaction to something from the time past, the quickest way to move back into the present moment, of course, is to take a deep breath. That's always the way that brings us back into the physical. And then once we have that deep breath, in that moment and stillness in that breath, we can recall the unconditional love, and then we can say, okay, how do I choose to approach my circumstances, my situation with unconditional love? That choice is very different than what I personally, and I think most people on the planet, still experience very much today, is that when we have a fearful experience, for example, we tend to then stay in fear. We never take that deep breath. We never really give ourselves another choice outside of fear. So we keep reacting to fear. We keep creating more fear. And of course, as all of us know, that becomes one big giant snowball and nearly impossible at times to get out of. Making unconditional love at least a possibility that presents a new opportunity. And over time, we really do create, I have created, a completely different reality by choosing to have unconditional love as a focal point in my life.
So how does that work?
Experience in that sense.
How does that work? You're in this fear, you're saying let's take a deep breath, and then let's reconnect to unconditional love as a source energy? I mean, how do you reconnect in that moment?
For me, of course, it's just natural. And now, after so many years, I would say that I'm rarely caught off guard because I'm, for the most part, just choosing to look at life with very open eyes, open mind, open heart. I look at life as infinite potential before me. So for me, I have to go back to kind of those earlier days, is that when I would take a deep breath, I would actually give myself that opportunity to consider, well, what does unconditional love mean for me right here and right now? And of course, because most people are focused on love in a very structured, kind of a predefined way, societally, culturally, personally, physiologically, mentally, emotionally. I mean, people have, they use the word love from I love my career to I love my spouse, my partner.
It's overused.
They express themselves, again, physiologically because they think based on lust. People have such a, shall we say, a skewed reality to love that it's become so washed out that people don't really recognize what it is. For adding the word unconditional, we're taking this idea that love is really a way of being. Unconditional is to be without condition. To be without condition is to be unlimited. Hence the definition, an unlimited way of being. Well,
isn't that redundant, though?
Well, part of it is that it's not my responsibility to determine what people consider their source is. In other words, whatever they consider their source to be, whether it's a creator being or a religious philosophy or a psychological connection or just a mental state, that part of the definition is not for me to describe for them. What I do try to share with people is that we are capable of creating anything. That much we know. Especially here in the Western world, we tend to be a little more focused on manifesting our dreams, manifesting our realities. So to do it with a sense of love and compassion, we're adding an element of nurturing and understanding that it's not just about love creating for an individual experience, is that we're all connected, and that connection becomes interdimensional, interdependent. It's much grander than just the simple idea that most people associate to love itself.
So how would you define love?
Oh, it's just wonderful.
Or how would you experience love? How could you share with us what it feels
like?
Well,
again, it's really going to be up to the individual, because to the degree that people have emotional overlays, one of the experiences I've had over the years is that when you truly understand unconditional love with its very, very broad, nearly universal understanding, there tends to be, like my case, I have a very detached love to everyone, yet paradoxically very attached. In other words, I love people deeply with a sense of compassion, and at the same time I am not sympathetic in the old terminology of, in other words, I don't necessarily see them as having their problems that they may seem to have. So for someone who's very emotional, for example, if they look at me and say, well, they're expecting a very sympathetic or emotional response, and yet my compassion could be seemingly almost cold or detached. And yet it's with the deepest compassion that I look at each person and say, you have a right to create from your own perspective, and I honor that right with the profoundness and depth of my heart. I can feel that, and I can know that, I can sense it. It is truly an energy in me, it's an awareness in me. One can say it borders on nothing to the extreme of incredible bliss. And yet for an emotional person who, say, is very fearful or doubtful or is certainly absorbed in negative energy in the moment, they may want a very gushy, swooshy, smooshy kind of approach that says, hey, why aren't you loving me? Why aren't you giving me all this energy? Why aren't you feeling for my problems? Why aren't you saying something that somehow comforts their fear? My approach is I choose to comfort their limitless potential. I choose to comfort the fact that they're able to overcome what's ever before them. So it's very difficult to describe in distinct words because every single person on this planet is going to have a different experience of unconditional love, especially given where they are in the moment.
And it seems from listening to you that there is also the potential that the love changes and evolves, and you have constantly to be open and kind of uncertain of how love is going to show up to fully experience it. Is there something in that that rings true to you?
Absolutely. In fact, the words open heart, it gives us actually the potential to maintain an open heart. You know, we're really at that point where we're past even having an open mind, because certainly when we start to open our heart, our mind really has to then come more subservient to our heart. Most people are the opposite. Most people suppress their heart. They think through their mind, they feel through their heart, and we really suggest the opposite. We say think through your heart and actually feel with your mind. Turn the equation completely around, and with an open heart comes genuinely an open mind. In other words, we embrace everybody where they're at. We see their potential. We also recognize that where they are is where they are, and it becomes an inside-out experience rather than an outside-in experience. And so, you know, I can certainly walk around any grocery store, go out in any crowd of people, and I can be walking around genuinely in love with everything and everyone around me, and yet it's most probable that most people wouldn't even know that I was doing that. As an opportunity, you know, I've done it over many, many years. It's helped me to actually hone my experience, my understanding of what unconditional love is for me. And I've also learned that it's not something that I can clearly describe for another, because the real joy is in having them experience it for themselves. I'm simply here suggesting, sharing, encouraging to try it, to simply try looking at life through unconditional love and see what they may actually have as an experience as a result.
So what are some of the tools that you recommend to open our hearts?
Well, certainly the first and foremost place, and I think it's perhaps the greatest neglect we have on the planet, is the true unconditional self-acceptance. It really is the beginning point of all of this, because we have been taught, most of us on this planet, you know, we're here to serve, we're here to give, we're here to share. Some people have been taught we're here to take. And all of it really, we all carry so much initial emotional baggage, so much of this cultural imprinting. You know, it really doesn't matter where we are on the planet, there's going to be a level of cultural imprinting that can be, you know, everything from religious to political to societal to simple ignorance to grand wisdom. The imprints are so strong that most of us don't even realize that we generally walk around with collective thoughts, rarely noticing our own. So the biggest opportunity to begin this process for me, the way I share it, is that if you can really begin to turn that outer focus inward and really begin to accept all of ourselves, that physical self, that emotional self, that mental self, that spiritual self, and truly choose to make life our own. In other words, no matter what we came here with, we can become whoever we really wish to become in our heart of hearts. And that initial self-acceptance, you know, of course it includes forgiveness, because that's the stage where we start with a detachment by forgiving. And, you know, at certain levels, forgiveness kind of even eventually fades away because you realize there's nothing to forgive. You know, again, we start with some of these tools. So you take that self-acceptance, you work with forgiveness, recognize the unlimited potential. Certainly physically, the deep breath is an excellent tool, because the deep breath is the one way, again, that we bring ourselves into the physical now moment. It's really quite surprising. You know, myself and most of us on this planet included, we forget to breathe. It's not that we're not breathing, we just simply are not conscious of our breath. And taking a deep breath is our ability to get out of our head, more into our physical body. And of course, when we're going out of our head towards our physical body, we also pass through the heart. And again, that's a way for us to reconnect with our heart. So a deep breath is, I think, the most perfect mini meditation anyone can have on this planet. Because if you can focus on breathing without any sense of difficulty or strain, then that makes us more present in the moment. And then, of course, once we've gone through self-acceptance, self-awareness, you know, we've relaxed, released, detached from a lot of our old emotional baggage and we've learned how to breathe in the moment, we begin to really cultivate that unconditional love. And then the beauty and the fun is when you turn around and start sharing the unconditional love. And through, of course, those experiences, we really truly fine-tune and hone unconditional love when we begin to share it, because we also begin to realize that not all of that initial love is unconditional. You know, we still want to change people, we still want people to do things our way, and yet now we have an awareness that allows us to make more or less constant self-correction, fine-tuning, shall we call it. You know, so it's from an inside-out process that we begin to share, and then we just continuously, in the circle of life, we continuously experience, and we grow, and we grow, and we experience.
Because the love is supposed to be shared and expressed, right? And then it deepens.
Well, not that it's supposed to be, it's that you can't help but have it be expressed. In other words, put another way, one of the phrases I often like to share with people is what we have within is what we give out. What we give out is what we get back. So if we have, for example, love, then we're going to give it out. If we give love out, we're going to get it back. It's the circle of life. Most people, again, on the planet have been trained to search for love outside of themselves, never realizing it's within them. So most people go spending most of their lifetime running around looking for love through their cars, through their spouses, through their children, through their work, through their whatever. And of course they're never fulfilled, because what they don't realize is that they don't know where they're coming from within. A lot of that external search is really when we have a lack of self-esteem, a lack of self-awareness. We have fears and doubts. We don't believe in ourselves. We don't trust ourselves. And of course, if you start taking those words and you start saying, well, if I have fear within, I'm going to give fear out. If I give fear out, what am I going to get back? If I have doubt within, I give doubt out, what I'm going to attract is more doubt. So to be able to say that we share the love, when we find that limitless supply, that wellspring of love, when we realize that we are love at the very core of our being, there's an unlimited amount of love to share, then we begin to share it, quite honestly, because there's nothing else we would want to do other than to share the love. And it's not even because we want to get it in return. It's simply our joy to expand. Love is a very expanding energy. Fear is a very destructive, limiting energy. And of course, you know, we're here now with greater awareness. We're actually saying, how about doing love for a change? How about if we see what our negativity, what our limitations can bring? Any one of us, we don't even need to step outside our front door to realize what the lack of love has brought us. You know, a tremendous amount of material experiences, but not necessarily a lot of happiness or a lot of joy. It's brought a lot of challenges and a lot of difficulties. And for me, and for what I'm choosing to share is, you know, we tried that. Let's try the love piece. It's already within us. You know, there's no one without it. It doesn't matter what status of life we're in. It's already there. This isn't something that somebody has to study. It's not something that somebody has to become, you know, intellectually absorbed with, or have certain techniques or find certain certification. It simply is becoming aware of the love that's already inside, and then simply allowing that love to radiate, you know, in, through, and around us, and then experience the expansion that goes on as we share it, and it expands others around us, and so on, in great waves all the way around the planet.
So let's continue to speak on that note about the powerful wisdom of the heart. We certainly, when we start following our heart, start making decisions that are irrational to the mind, yet the heart seems certain and wants to take that is guiding us towards a direction that just doesn't make sense. You know, how can you explain that? How can the heart be so sure of something? How can it feel so right when nothing else shows? There's no other little elements that shows that this is logical.
A very good question, and again, as I share it with you, you already would understand this because you have been following your heart for quite some time. And so for those of us that have made perhaps that first leap off the cliff, you know, we're a bit more further along the path, or say we've embarked a little bit more into this territory. For someone who's standing on the cliff,
Exactly.
wanting to open up to their heart, we can stand there and encourage them with all the compassion and all the enthusiasm that we know of, and yet that first step, it is a very tricky step for the mind. It's a very tricky step for the ego, for the personality, for the outer self, because it is, in a way, the perception is a feeling that we're stepping into the unknown. There's a certain truth to that, because having been so trained to follow the mind, so trained to follow the societal constructs, it can be very challenging to step outside that reality. How can you know? There's a sense in every choice, once that first one is made, the choice to follow one's heart is a sense deep within it. One could call it intuitive, one could call it, in the gut. They could. There are lots of ways people experience it, but there's a knowing that is so intangible that you couldn't describe exactly where it resides. It just feels right. And in fact, most of the decisions I've made over the last 20 years has been by this simple phrase: does it feel right? And for me, if it doesn't feel right, then it's an opportunity for me to question whether or not it's really the choice I choose to make. When I was in the banking world, when I was in the business world, when I was getting my master's degree, that was the furthest thing from my mind. It had to be logical, it had to be real, it had to be tangible, it had to make sense from all the outer experiences. And yet, I can also say at that point in my life, not only was I unhappy, never once did I expect to write books, have my own TV program, to end up creating a nonprofit that's known globally. The things that have happened in the last 20 years are so far, incredibly far beyond my wildest fascination, dreams, imagination. And I can simply look back now and say that I'm here today with the creations that I have, not only because I took that first step, but since each step has been made the same way, to the best of my ability, I have followed that inner notion that feels right. And again, it's difficult for someone who has not made that initial step consciously, and we are all doing it all the time. We are all making choices, even non-choices are our choices, but we are actually following a certain intuition, a certain inner guidance. The difference is when we come from the heart, our heart often has very different plans for us than our mind. And if we're concerned about what other people think about us, if we're concerned about how we look in the eyes of others, it's going to be much more difficult to make that leap. It was extraordinarily difficult for me to make that first leap, because I did have my foot in everything real. I did have my foot in everything tangible, and walking away for me was walking away completely. In other words, I left everything. I left where I lived, I left the business world, I left the family, friends, everything, and then moved to a different city, really to pursue an expansion of my dream, never realizing that it was the first step in an awakening process, a self-awareness process. And by having that first courageous leap, all the other steps, even though they've probably been leaps, they have not felt quite the same as that first one. So I say to anyone that is feeling like they're at the edge of a cliff, trust yourself. Absolutely trust yourself. And we might find out that there are some carpenters that want to be lawyers, and then we might find out that there's some lawyers that want to be concert violinists. There's so much more going on to us than our outer trappings, our outer labels, and it does take courage, enormous courage, to do it. And yet, the one thing you will find is there's zero regret. There's absolutely no regret for ever following the heart. There are often lots of regrets for following the mind, because it doesn't necessarily bring the same fulfillment.
So would you say that it's our soul's plan to go back to that unconditional love, that our essence that we are? Is that what this life is all about?
I can say that for me, the idea, again, labels, soul's plan, or a creative instinct, of fire in our heart, a spark of light in who we are. I think all of those things are absolutely true. And yet, the moment we attempt to define it, we still lose out on a certain aspect of what it truly is. So, for me, it becomes the joy of the adventure for the adventure's sake. and the creation for the creation's sake and the sharing of love for the love's sake, it happens much more naturally once we start to tap into the love, because we start to realize that it's already in us and it already exists. It's, you know, this bizarre search that we've all gone on for so long, seeking something outside ourselves, you know, the human seeking some kind of spiritual essence, only to find out that we're really already spiritual beings having a human experience. And so simply enjoy the experience of being human, enjoy the experience of being on this planet, and that naturally will unfold and share and show all the joys that are constantly around us, no matter what. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the biggest simple awarenesses that comes out of this, is that love is always all around us. There's beauty to be found in absolutely everything when we're open to it. So if we're simply choosing to see things in front of us with fear, doubt, worry, concern, hatred, anger, lust, you know, greed, whatever that is, then certainly the universe will reflect that back to us. The world will reflect that back to us. If we seek beauty, if we seek love, if we seek to understand and connect with that level of it, then we'll see that it's all around us. So in a way, yes, we are returning back to a place that we never actually left. We just think we left it, because it's always all around us. So again, one of the biggest things I've truly had to learn to come to embrace is that life is really a paradox. You know, sometimes it's two sides of the same coin, sometimes the coin doesn't even exist. And I've learned to enjoy the fact that a lot of the terminology we use often defines and helps us observe and understand things. It also instantly limits us to the greater experience. And yet we're still sharing. So, you know, we use words as a language, and we
exactly. Words can be so limiting, like I love you, or yes. Or even wanting to experience something and putting a label to it. Some call it being a magician in life, or a wizard, as Deepak Chopra would say, when you fully experience life like this from this unconditional loving place. But I think even putting such a label is very limiting. As soon as we try to reach something, it seems like it breaks that whole actual magic and unlimitedness of love, doesn't it?
Yes, in fact, I have always been extremely careful with words, especially in my writings, but to the best of my ability, when I don't, you know, just get excited and jumble out every word that I can think of, I choose words carefully. And like, for example, I rarely use the word God. You know, it's probably the #1 word on the planet in every language, and yet also it's a collective mindset, you know, beyond our own nations and our own cultures. There's a planetary culture and a planetary mindset, and this idea of God, for example, the very specific, not even going to saying the word creator or some of the other words that we use, but particularly the word God, has such an instant reaction to the logical mind. People have a preconceived notion of what they think God is to them, and quite honestly, most people have never actually even questioned what God is to them. They've simply embraced and accepted millennia of suggestions of what God is. So I choose usually to work in very different types of words. If I use it, I will often say God, Goddess, all that is, because then we're taking the male, the female, and then the universal in the same breath, and it allows me to share a concept without having my audience quickly identify with God and then slam the door shut from anything else, because now they're going to color everything with their definition. I often use the word universe, for example, because to me universe is much more universal. And so my choices have been to actually use terminology that is often slightly askew, slightly off in left field, is a very purposeful idea, because again, I'm not wanting to say to people, this is how it is, this is what it is, because it's not my position to tell anybody what their truth is. At the same time, I really hope to encourage people to think for themselves, genuinely and truly deepen within, and in so doing, I want them to consider that some of the definitions that they have are very limiting. Our verbal communication is one of the most powerful things on the planet, and it's also one of the most destructive. And some of the most destructive is in the most subtle usage of words. We can destroy a dream in a person by simply making one negative comment towards them at some stage in their life. And to me, destroying a person's dream is as horrendous an act as actually killing them. Because to have a person not fulfilling their dream because of something I would have said as a critical comment is, to me, in a way, killing them at that moment, because they are no longer able to move forward with which they came here for a purpose to manifest.